This is Land of Havilah, John 21, the last chapter of the Gospel of John, verse 1. After these things, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself this way: Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They told him, "We are also coming with you." They immediately went out and entered into the boat. That night they caught nothing. Comment: the sons of Zebedee are James and John, Mark 10:35. John never mentions himself by name in his gospel, and he never mentions his brother James. It's after the resurrection. Verse 2 says at least 7 of the disciples have gone to Galilee. They're not retreating to Galilee because they think they've been defeated. They're here on instructions from an angel, Matthew 28:7, and from Jesus himself, Matthew 28:10 and Mark 14:28. Jesus said he would meet them there. They're at the Sea of Tiberias, which is the Sea of Galilee. While they're waiting for Jesus to appear, Peter figured, why not go fishing? 3 or so years ago, Peter, Andrew, James, and John were commercial fishermen by trade and partners on the Sea of Galilee, Mark 4:18 and Luke 5:10. So by going fishing, they're just passing time and being productive while they wait. As yet, the disciples don't necessarily know much about God's plan, Acts 1:6. They're in limbo waiting to see what's next. They fished all night and caught nothing, and verse 4. But when day had already come, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. Jesus therefore said to them, "Children, have you anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you'll find some." They cast it therefore, and now they weren't able to draw it in for the multitude of fish. That disciple therefore whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." Comment: John recognized it was Jesus because he remembered Jesus had done the same thing in the past. About 3 years before, in Luke chapter 5, before Jesus called them, Peter, James, and John had their boats pulled up on shore. They were washing their nets after fishing all night and catching nothing. Jesus came along with a crowd following him. He got in Peter's boat and preached out of it. Then he told Peter to put out into the deep for a catch. When they put out the nets, there were so many fish, they had to call for the other boat. When they brought their boats into land, they left everything and followed Jesus. So today, when they were about 100 yards offshore and a man on shore called out and told them to put their nets off the right side, and there was a multitude of fish, it was déjà vu. John knew it was the Lord. Still in verse 7. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he wrapped his coat around him, for he was naked, and threw himself into the sea. Comment: the language doesn't necessarily indicate that Peter was totally naked. Probably he just had his coat off. When he wrapped his coat around him, he didn't necessarily put it on in the usual way. Maybe he just tied it around his waist so he could still swim. As Peter's swimming to shore, verse 8, but the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 200 cubits away, dragging the net full of fish. Comment: they were about 100 yards out, verse 9. So when they got out on the land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of 153 great fish. Even though there were so many, the net wasn't torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." None of the disciples dared inquire of him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. Then Jesus came and took the bread, gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This is now the 3rd time that Jesus was revealed to his disciples after he had risen from the dead. Comment: Jesus appeared to his disciples for the first time on Sunday evening, the day of resurrection, when Jesus came into the closed room, John 20:19. The second time was 8 days later, John 20:26. The appearance on the beach is now the 3rd time to the disciples, but he's appeared to others as well. It won't be the last. The disciples will be present when he ascends to heaven, Mark 16:19 and Acts 1:9. Someone who feels a call to the ministry might read this story and notice that Peter was engaged in his old work and it wasn't productive. When the Lord called, he enthusiastically answered. He wasn't disappointed. It was indeed Jesus, and there was a ready-made fire with fish already cooking and bread. and Jesus provided a great harvest as well. So would Peter rather be empty on the sea or with Jesus in the center of God's will, with provision and productivity? Coming up, we should remember that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. On the second denial, he swore, Matthew 26:72. On the third denial, he swore and cursed, Matthew 26:74. Verse 15. So when they had eaten their breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" Comment: Jesus asked, "Do you love me more than these?" But what does he mean by these? Was he asking, do you love me more than this boat and these nets? Or do you love me more than you love these 6 other disciples? Or do you love me more than the other disciples love me? Or all of the above? After Peter denied Jesus 3 times, Jesus is giving him a chance to reaffirm his love. Verse 15. He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." Comment: Jesus wants Peter to feed his lambs, meaning feed my people spiritually. Verse 16. He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you have affection for me?" Peter was grieved because he asked him the third time, "Do you have affection for me?" He said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I have affection for you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Comment: For each of the 3 times that Peter denied Jesus, Jesus gave Peter a chance to take it back. Peter must keep in mind that for him, loving Jesus means tending his sheep. There's no such thing as faith without works, James 2:17. It applied to Peter, and it applies to us. If we love Jesus, we'll do what he says. Jesus is still talking to Peter, verse 18. "Most certainly I tell you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and you walked where you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go." Now he said this, signifying by what kind of death he would glorify God. When he had said this, he said to him, "Follow me." Comment: Jesus implied very strongly that Peter will die the death of a martyr. When Jesus had said this, he said to Peter, "Follow me," meaning follow me starting now, all your life, and all the way to the martyr's death that I know is coming. There's no biblical record of it, but one day Peter will remember those words when he stretches out his hands, someone dresses him, and carries him to his death. Apparently the conversation between Jesus and Peter occurred not around the fire, but as they were walking privately, because, verse 20, "Then Peter, turning around, saw a disciple following. This was the disciple whom Jesus loved, the one who also leaned on Jesus' breast at the supper and asked, 'Lord, who is going to betray you?' Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, 'Lord, what about this man?' Jesus said to him, 'If I desire that he stay until I come, what is that to you? You follow me.'" Comment: Peter wanted to know if John will die as a martyr as well. Jesus said, "None of your business. Your only business is to follow me." Verse 23. This saying therefore went out among the brothers that this disciple wouldn't die. Yet Jesus didn't say to him that he wouldn't die, but, "If I desire that he stay until I come, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who testifies about these things and wrote these things. We know that his witness is true. Comment: Here the writer positively identifies himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. He says, "I know I'm telling you the truth." Verse 25. There are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they would all be written, I suppose that even the world itself wouldn't have room for the books that would be written. Comment: John the writer says again that he left out a lot for the sake of brevity. With regard to the post-resurrection Jesus, John left out that Jesus appeared over a period of 40 days, Acts 1:3, including to 500 people at one time, 1 Corinthians 15:6, and other times as well. That's the end of the Gospel of John. Most of the comments on the original language are from the NET Bible translation notes. The text is the World English Bible. Isolated quotes are occasionally from other versions. Check landofhavilah.net for other available titles.